Conor McGregor's coach John Kavanagh said on his social media that he felt Jon Jones clearly deserved to win the decision against Dominick Reyes at UFC 247. Let's get into it. Jones and Reyes were involved in a super close fight that Jones ultimately won by unanimous decision to once again defend the UFC light heavyweight title. But many MMA fans felt that Reyes should have gotten the nod on the judges' scorecards. The judges scored the contest 48-47, 48-47, and 49-46. Well, Conor McGregor's coach John Kavanagh gave his take on the UFC 247 main event. A fan asked Kavanagh what you think of the Jones and Reyes fight. Who you got? In which Kavanagh responded, "I know I'm wrong to do what I do because I'm not a trained judge, but I will always weigh later rounds more heavily than earlier ones. I asked myself who would survive a no-time rule encounter. Because of that, it was a clear at Johnny Bones victory for me." Well, a lot of MMA fans critiqued Kavanagh's statement by responding with, "So you think Diaz won the second fight then?" referring to Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 2, that was ultimately decided by the judges. What do you guys think about UFC 247? Do you guys agree with John Kavanagh, in which Jon Jones was clearly the winner because of his round 4 and 5 performance? Or do you guys agree with Dana White, who scored the contest 3-1 Reyes heading into the 5th round? Let us know down in the comment section below. Brian Ortega wants Zabit Magomedsharipov for 5 rounds. Rumors emerged this week that the UFC was working on adding a potential featherweight firefight between Ortega and Magomedsharipov to UFC 249, the April pay-per-view featuring UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson. Well, Brian Ortega spoke to Brett Okamoto. He said he is aware of the Zabit Magomedsharipov rumors, but nothing is signed and he's not sure what's going on. He does want to fight Zabit 5 rounds. Says if Zabit wants to be a champ this year, take a 5-rounder. What do you guys think about Brian Ortega versus Zabit Magomedsharipov? Let us know down in the comment section below. Khabib Nurmagomedov continues to pile on Conor McGregor, says Donald Cerrone's time is up. Since UFC 246 went down, Dana White has said multiple times that Conor McGregor is in line for a title shot on account of his victory over Donald Cerrone. But if you're expecting Khabib Nurmagomedov to change his mind and to start praising McGregor for his win, it sounds like you're going to be waiting for a very, very long time. Even before it was confirmed that McGregor was going to fight Cerrone at UFC 246, plenty of fans and pundits questioned if the UFC and McGregor had decided to go with a warm-up fight. While everyone knows that Donald Cerrone has recorded innumerable big wins during his storied career, many people argued that a path to a title shot should go through Justin Gaethje. After all, he quickly took out Cerrone in September, and Cowboy is now 36. Further, if McGregor won, which he did, the UFC could move forward with massive bouts. If he lost, not so much, since Conor was subbed by Khabib in 2018, thus the warm-up fight critique. Well, although McGregor quickly ran through Cerrone and looked great while doing so, Khabib still isn't happy with how the UFC went about booking the fight. While speaking at a press conference recently in Russia, the lightweight champ said this: "Millions of people watch, but there aren't a million fighters. There are 300, 400, 500 that fight in the UFC. They have trainers. So let's say 10,000 people that know MMA. They see who loses and under what circumstances, what moves, when he fought, where he fought, what organization. Few people know those details. Others just don't care who's fighting and how, who he fought in the past, who the opponent is. They don't know anything. They just watch the fight, and UFC works very well with that. So they picked him, Cerrone, and their plan worked, and people started to talk about it again, about a rematch and other stuff. Cerrone lost 7 out of his last 10 fights. A man comes out 10 times and loses 7, and he gets called a legend. Well, let him be a legend, but his time is up. There are other fighters who've proven themselves with their status, with their convincing victories. There are other contenders, but the UFC went another route. And that's more suitable for the media, the people, but one that makes no sense to experts." Now, Cerrone fans may take issue with Khabib's statement here about his time being up. After all, Cowboy is one of the toughest fighters in the game, and it wasn't that long ago when he defeated the likes of Al Iaquinta and Alex Hernandez. But when you consider Cerrone's age and that he's lost 3 in a row, his time as a title contender is probably done, right? What do you think? Is there another title run left in Cowboy? And what about the UFC's decision to book McGregor-Cerrone? Do you think some criticism is warranted, or did Cerrone deserve the opportunity on account of everything he's done in his amazing career? UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman claims the beef between Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal is an act and suggested they've slept with the same woman. Let's get into it. Covington and Masvidal were friends for years and trained together at American Top Team while moving up the ladder in the UFC. But in the last few years, the pair have developed a heated rivalry, especially after Covington became a star in the UFC and started to talk smack about his fellow fighters at American Top Team, which Masvidal did not like. Well, in a recent interview, UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman claims the beef between Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal is an act. He also went as far to say that he has intel on the relationship between Covington and Masvidal and suggested the two have even shared a bed together and slept with the same women. What do you guys think about all of this? Both Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal have yet to respond to what Usman said, so it will be interesting to hear what they say to Usman's comments if and when they do reply. What do you guys make of all of this? Do you guys see the possibility of Kamaru Usman's comments being a reality? Why would both Covington and Masvidal fake their beef? Maybe to set up a fight later down the line after Jorge Masvidal fights Kamaru Usman? Here's what Jorge Masvidal has been saying about Colby Covington recently.
The universe is going to correct that mistake via me. Our time will come. I'll dictate when, and then I will. A lot of people said, you included, I think, that what I did to Ben was a little uncalled for. No, it wasn't. What I'm going to do to Kobe is going to be uncalled for, and I can put my life on that, man. Coward has not gone to eat at these places. I heard he's only doing Uber Eats, you know? Not like I'm going to assault him or nothing. That's not me. Just want to talk to him man to man, you know?
Is this fake? Let us know down in the comments section below. Dana White comments on the Stephen A. Smith-Joe Rogan exchange regarding Donald Cerrone's performance. Stephen A. Smith and Joe Rogan have been making headlines since UFC 246 as a result of a clear disagreement they have over Smith's post-UFC 246 comments. More recently, Dana White weighed in on the exchange, and it seems clear he's siding with Rogan. Unless you're new to MMA, you know that Cerrone was taken out by Conor McGregor in less than 60 seconds last month. McGregor used shoulder strikes to stun the popular fighter and then finished Cowboy with a flurry of follow-up strikes. After the card, Smith laid into Cerrone's performance big time. For example, here's just some of what the veteran broadcaster had to say. This guy knows better, and somehow, someway, you're in there with Conor McGregor, and I'm going to tell you all something right now. He never had a pay-per-view before. He hasn't been a champion. It could be that the lights were a little bit too bright. I've covered sports for a quarter century. Not this sport, but sports. And there have been plenty of examples where I've seen guys that when the bright lights are brighter, palms get sweaty, backsides get tight, and they don't show up that particular night. And that's what happened to Cowboy Cerrone. He didn't show up, period, and I don't understand it. Those comments didn't sit too well with a lot of MMA fans and observers, including Rogan. During a follow-up episode of Rogan's podcast, he argued Smith shouldn't be commentating on MMA fights since he doesn't have much experience in martial arts. He also took some verbal pokes at a video that was shared out of Smith awkwardly hitting pads. Smith, however, didn't back down. While he credited Rogan for his knowledge, he didn't apologize for what he said. During a follow-up interview with MMA Junkie, White was asked to comment on the situation, and here's some of what he had to say.
One of the things when we bought and built the UFC that we always did, you know, being fight fans ourselves, you know, I'm a huge fight fan. Lorenzo was a huge fight fan. Joe Rogan is a huge fight fan. And one of the things that we hated was on HBO boxing and some other boxing that they would do. Listen, you're tuning in and buying the pay-per-view because you love these guys and you respect these fighters and you're a fan of the sport. The last thing you want to do is hear somebody ripping them apart. It's not, I'm not into it. Rogan's not into it, you know, and you don't see that in the UFC. There'll be times when I'm pissed off at a guy and I'll voice my opinion on what he did or whatever, or if a fight is really bad or somebody did something. But what we don't do is when a fight is over and a guy loses, we don't go in and rip them apart. Just not our style. It's not, we're fans. We don't do it. So I think Rogan was reacting to that because, you know, that's our philosophy here.
So what do you guys think? Do you agree with White? Or was Smith right or just doing his job? Do you want to see Smith on future UFC broadcasts or pay-per-views?